Yo, ¿cómo estás? This is Wild on Tues, and thank you for joining me on my channel. Please, if you're not subscribed yet, hit the like, the subscribe, and the bell for future notifications. Other than the importance of an officer in a club, there's a role within the club that is very important. That role is a sponsor for the prospect. Roll the intro. Yo, ¿cómo estás? Once again, this is Wild on Tues, and thank you for joining me on my channel. Like I said, we're going to be going over the sponsor for a prospect. The sponsor is important because he teaches a prospect or prospects and guides them in the way that he will successfully make it into the club and be a positive contributor in his MC career. He educates, teaches them the responsibilities, rights, duties, and gives him a clear, very clear expectation of what's wanted and needed in the club. If the sponsor doesn't do his job right, then he has failed not only the prospect, the club, but also the future of that club. All clubs are a bit different, but generally a sponsor is a mentor for that prospect. He gets the prospects the questions and answers that is needed and guides them and picks them up when they make mistakes. Being a sponsor can be a real obligation because if a prospect makes a mistake, that could have consequences for that sponsor. Now you got to remember, the sponsor is basically vouching for that prospect. It is the sponsor that says to the club that he can be trusted enough to be considered a club for a club membership. It is also the reputation of the sponsor that is laid on the line for the prospect. If the prospect does something to violate the trust of the club, that sponsor can suffer the same consequences as the prospect. Now, one of the most important things for me to teaching someone is club history. That sponsor teaches the prospect club history. The club's history can be used to teach the experience and wisdom to the prospect so he can get lessons of what failed and what succeeded. If you don't know where your club came from, it's really hard to predict or tell where the club is going to be going. The sponsor teaches the prospect the club's bylaws. He needs to make sure that that prospect is prepared to contribute and be a positive member in the club and guarantees that he knows his rights and responsibilities according to those bylaws. Equally important, and you can see this anywhere and everybody will tell you, one of the biggest things taught to the prospect is how to ride in the pack. Trust me, many guys come into a club not knowing how to ride in the pack, and that's okay. If the prospect is not ready to ride in the MC, the sponsor should be teaching him, helping him, guiding him how to ride in the pack safely and interrogate him into the pack. The prospect needs to learn how to ride with confidence and build his skills to ride in the pack. Lastly, if traditions are to last forever and the culture that made the MC great is to be passed on from a club generation to club generation, then the traditions must remain intact and impressed upon the minds of those that are coming up through the ranks, who will lead the club in the future. You never know if this prospect is going to be the next president, the next national. You just don't know. Like any great leader, the sponsor has to lead by example. That sponsor stands up for that prospect. He makes sure that he stays out of trouble and helps out with any bullies that are within the club or outside the club that bother him. He will ensure that the prospect is not overly hazed either. As a prospect, that's what your sponsor should be teaching you. He should be doing this, and he should instill what experience and wisdom really is. What I've been telling people for years is the difference between wisdom and experience. Experience, you learn from your mistakes. Wisdom, you learn from others' mistakes. So when that sponsor is teaching you mistakes that he has made, you're gaining wisdom. And like I tell anybody else or prospects, if you're too experienced, you're up have too much. So better be wise than experienced. All right, guys, until next week, God bless, much love and respect, and peace.